Well, we said we're going to let you know about Polytracks, and Polytracks are a thing of the future. They certainly have taken the show jumping world by storm, and in South Africa we have a number of Polytracks. So we thought it would be pertinent to get involved on our show and to be able to chat about the Polytrack, none other than Peter Morrison. Peter, nice having you with us.
Thanks, James. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, you're Martin Collins in South Africa.
Yes. Yeah.
But you weren't Martin Collins. You were the originator of all this stuff.
So we started a business called Talk Earth.
Yeah.
Did mainly arenas, and my interest was in the show jumping. And then I wanted to know how to do things better, improve the surfaces that we competed on and trained on. And so I went overseas to see Martin Collins, discussed things with them. We bought some fibre from them, and it started slowly. And then they got more involved as we started to do a little bit in the racing industry. I think he got a little more interested in our business. And then he bought into our business, and we changed the name from Talk Earth to Martin Collins South Africa. And that's when we started with the Polytrack.
Well, obviously there was a lead up. You saw a gap as a show jumper, and you've obviously been involved in. Have you been in show jumping all your life?
Yeah, since I was 9 years old. So it's a long time now.
It's a different world, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. Very, very different to the racing. Yeah.
And obviously you're based up on the Highveld.
I live in Midrand, and our offices are in Midrand. I've got a 4-hectare property, so I'm lucky enough to run my business from home.
So what happened is, as a show jumper, you suddenly got to finish your formative years, and you've carried on show jumping, and you thought, now we've got to improve the surfaces for these guys.
Yeah, I think the things horses became much more expensive. Advent of the warm bloods and things, and you're producing horses from young, and by the time they got to A grade, they were unsound, joint problems. Nobody really gave much thought to what we jumped on. It was either grass or sand, and I thought we need to actually look at how we can improve what we're doing here. Try and get horses to last a little bit longer, making more consistent surfaces, and surfaces that are tolerant of weather and a bit more consistent through all weather conditions. Yeah.
So you obviously added a fibre of some sort. Have you got a degree in this stuff? Have you?
No, just trial and error. My field, so probably 3 or 4 years of trying it on my own, and then I went to Martin Collins, He's had 30 years of pretty much started the same way. And then it's the type of fibres that they've used. They've trialled various different ones and different things. So I think the first Polytrack as such was installed probably 20, 25 years ago in the UK.
And how has that lasted? Because there's always the question of how these tracks last, Polytracks.
Well, I think it obviously depends on how much they get used. So the Polytracks in the UK, if you take Lingfield for an example, it was replaced after 11 years.
Okay.
But in 11 years, they elected not to do any maintenance to it, any top-ups, any maintenance whatsoever. So the thing we advocate now is if you do maintenance, top them up, rejuvenate them every 3 to 5 years, you should almost get unlimited life out of the track.
You here at the moment because we're doing the pull-up area at Greyville. They've decided, because they had some problems with the Polytrack going onto the grass, there was no drainage or whatever there. So now they've decided to make the whole pull-up area Polytrack.
Yeah, so make it longer. We're extending it by 100 meters. So it's a new drainage layer and porous asphalt, and then new surface along that section.
All right. So let's talk about the drainage, because I've been watching this progress. Every Monday I go play golf there, so I have a look at what's going on. And the drainage is quite involved.
Well, the drainage is almost, I would say, the key to any surface is the drainage, because if you want a consistent surface, you've got to be able to manage the water that's on it and in it, and without consistent drainage, you've got no chance. And the way we lay our drainage layer, every square meter of the track drains at exactly the same rate. So you don't get sections that are dry and sections that are saturated. It will all drain at exactly the same rate.
So why was there, I'll go throw you the curveball.
Yeah.
Why was there that problem that we had last year with the Polytrack where there was a section that we couldn't race over? It was
The
too wet?
1200.
Yeah.
The 1200 it's in a dip, so the road actually flooded over the curb and onto the Polytrack. So it was just the volume of water that came in that short space of time that the drainage couldn't cope. The drainage will cope with 50 to 100 mils an hour. But
50 to 100 mils an hour.
Yeah.
So you could have a cyclone, it would be no problem.
Yeah, pretty much. But what happened there was it's the cumulative runoff down the road from both ends. So the road flooded and it flooded over the track.
And we did not see that coming. There was just.
I think it was just a freak storm, and it was literally, I think, sort of 40, 45 minutes later. That water had drained, but it took time to go through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because let's get back to the bottom surface. It seems like there's a lot of pipes in there, and pipes at a certain configuration. How those?
Well, the pipes are there just to take the water away. Essentially, how it works, you've got a stone drainage layer of 150 mils thick. So your surface is 150 mils thick. Then you have a porous asphalt to stop the stones coming through and allow you to drive traffic over it. The water goes through the surface, through the asphalt, and into your stone layer. So that's your first part of the drainage. Then sits in the stone layer, which is, so in that 150 mils, you've probably got voids for maybe 80 to 100 mils of water that can sit in that layer, and then it finds the pipes and runs out. So it drains quite quickly straight down, and then finds the pipes and comes out.
And all right, let's talk about the surface. The surface itself, because you've obviously got this porous layer where the water can get through and then run through the stones and that. That's how we used to build tracks in the early days. We made a V in the bottom and then put stones at the bottom, big stones, smaller stones, and then put some sort of
membrane or something.
Yeah, membrane on it. And the trouble with the membrane was that the sand broke down and formed a layer on top of the membrane. And then the water sat on top of that because it became like concrete.
Yeah, because you get a layer of sand. So it's quite important what sand you use. So we use silica sands, so it's quite a hard sand. It doesn't break down as quickly as a river sand as such. And you don't get that compaction on the bottom. So and that silt that'll block things up.
And then the fibers, obviously, that you mix in with the sand. Are these special fibers? How do you come about these things?
It's polypropylene fiber. Comes out of factory in Europe. It's specifically made for equestrian use. They export to all over the world, mainly through Martin Collins. But it's available to buy anywhere in the world, and it's specifically designed for equestrian use. So
could you not make that fiber here in this country?
It is possible. It's a quantity that you can get in the volume that you do. So it's actually it's cheaper for us to import it than to try and manufacture here. We just don't have the volume that they're producing. So their cost of production is much lower than what we could do it for.
Peter, let's talk about the different tracks, because you obviously are an expert in this now, having been involved since from the beginning. There are other tracks as well, which people use as synthetic tracks. I know that Tapita was one of them. What are the differences between all these tracks?
I think the essential differences in the mixed design as such. The components are pretty similar. The key components are your sand, your fiber, your wax. So Martin Collins done a lot of research into the different waxes and what waxes work in different climates. So, for instance, we wouldn't use the same wax in Durban as we would in Port Elizabeth.
Is that
because
so?
you've got they've got to have different heat tolerances, and I think it's those Martin Collins. It's the mixes and the recipes are different. So you'll get slightly different feels between the tracks. And although it is quite scientific, that's where it gets a bit more of a personal touch, I think.
So basically what you're telling me is that you take into consideration everything that is going to affect the track,
Yeah,
especially heat and humidity.
So heat, humidity, rainfall, and you need a track that'll work within certain parameters. Obviously, your extreme temperatures and extreme cold, you don't really cater for those. You cater for somewhere in between, and it'll be, I suppose, on a PE you'll have generally your average temperature probably 21, 22 degrees, but you can get days in PE when it is 30 degrees.
Yes.
So you wouldn't build a track to take temperatures of 30 degrees. So you'll build a track that'll work comfortably between 12 and 23 degrees. When it gets too hot and the surface temperature, your surface temperature of your track, we've measured this track, gets to 56, 58 degrees.
So it gets really hot
Gets
here
really
on a
hot.
hot day.
So
And obviously, we've got a bigger spectrum because we race at night as well.
Yeah.
So you can get from that type of temperature to quite low temperatures.
quite low temperatures.
Is that going to affect the track down the line?
Not really. So the wax temperatures, I mean the wax we apply at, you heat it to sort of 180 to 200 degrees to apply it to the surface while you're mixing it. So those temperature variations are not really going to make too much difference. Freezing cold is more likely to damage.
No, we're never going to get that.
We're never going to get that. Yeah. So obviously your waxes would go to you would also be from maybe looking at somewhere between 12 and 26, 28 degrees would be the average.
Yeah.
That we'd look at. So when it's really hot, you want to put some water on the track. So if the track's surface temperature goes over 30, 35 degrees, we're wanting to put water on.
Okay.
So
What interests me as a trainer, and having watched this track, there should be no difference in the running surface from inside to outside. But we find that the track runs faster in some places than in others. Is that a factor? Why would that be?
I don't really see a reason for it. I don't see, because it's exactly the same mix, exactly the same preparation, through the track. Whether it could be something to do with fractionally more compaction where the tyre tracks of the tractors are, but the tractors do move across the track.
So tyre tracks would have an impact.
It would make it firmer.
Yeah.
So you have a tine behind the tyre track that'll actually open that area up more to alleviate that compaction.
Okay.
But it's minuscule, differences in surface.
Well, what interests me is that we see that, like now, there's cars driving down the outside of this track a lot. Okay. Now that's got to affect the surface.
The car, it will definitely affect the surface, and if you look at when they pave or do roads, they use pneumatic rollers. So that's a roller with tires on, to get increased compaction. So if you're driving cars up and down, it's not going to be, or buckies, it's not going to be good for the track. You shouldn't be using it as a road.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because we have said to them, this is why the outside of the track is faster than the inside of the track.
Could well be why the outside track is.
The other thing is that the equipment, I don't think, fits the whole way across the track.
No, so you've got there's two Gallop Masters here.
Yeah.
I think one is 4.5 meters wide and the other's 5.5.
Yes.
So they're different sizes and they should be swapped around and do different areas. So you're not driving on the same track all the time.
So you should swap the Gallop Masters as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so you shouldn't be using the same Gallop Master on the same track all the time.
Very interesting. We're getting to the nitty-gritty.
Yeah.
Why is it that the Summerfelt Polytrack is much firmer than the one down here?
Generally, I think it's because it's colder.
Yeah.
And it is probably not. I think it's colder and it's used when it is much colder, so it needs to be prepped much deeper. And as a training track, it should be easier to prep to make that softer than this one. This one is generally a firmer track than that one.
Yeah. Well, the
because it's a
trainers,
racing.
I must tell you, the trainers bring their horses here to gallop from Summerfeld on this track.
Yeah.
That means that there's got to be something not right with that one. Would that be
I think it's
a fair comment?
It can only be preparation, and if it's preparation, it needs to be done for early in the morning, and that's got to be washed. Obviously, with any wax coated surface, they can compact quite tightly. So you need a power harrow. You need to keep that track open. We do regular inspections. The last inspection I did on that track, well, the last two I've done, I found it to be quite good and soft and well maintained.
Okay.
There have been a couple of times before that where it has been much firmer than it should have been, especially as a training track.
So we're getting there now with it. Is it? It's definitely looking like it's softer and probably the levels that you set the you set the times at.
It's the levels that you set the gallop master at. It's how often you power harrow. It's the weather conditions. So cold and wet is going to tighten that track up a lot. So you've got to be, you really need to walk that track every day and adjust it for the temperatures that are coming. So if you prepare it the night before for the next morning, you might well have to go and redo it in the morning, even though there haven't been any horses over it. But do it early to open it up. If it's been a very cold night or it's been raining overnight, you definitely want to get in and open the track up, because it will be firmer, and there'll be a difference in that track from 5 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock in the morning when the sun's been on it for 2 or 3 hours.
Peter, another question that obviously comes up from us as trainers is that daytime racing seems to be a different type of racing to nighttime racing. Would there be a difference in the track and those two?
The track could be all temperature related. So it would be slightly softer on a hot day.
On a hot day, yeah. You find the front horses come back to you easier during the daytime than at nighttime.
Okay.
So you find that the speed horses hold up at night more so than in the daytime.
Than in the daytime.
Often, that's a factor.
Okay.
And these are things that you don't want to happen, because as punters want to see a complete consistency, certainly with times and the way the track's prepared. Is it possible to do that?
It is possible. So that's what you say. If it's a really hot day, you should be putting some water on the track to cool it down so that it runs more consistently.
You obviously told these guys this, and you keep them informed.
Yeah, and the challenge would come when you have a sudden change in temperature from a very hot day and it suddenly cools down. So you have a few races sort of later on in the afternoon when it's really hot, and then you can get a cold wind coming in. Suddenly it's overcast and the temperature drops by 10 degrees. You've got to be on the ball and change how you maintain it and what you're looking at. So temperatures are key. It's really important to look at the temperature of the track and what you're dealing with, and then obviously the ambient temperature around.
Is this going to be part of our lives? I just want to finish off with you. Is this going to be part of our lives in the future of racing worldwide? Because there's a perception that people want to race worse horses, the lower class horses race on Polytrack as such.
I think if you look at Port Elizabeth, it's been, there's been a lot of race meetings saved. I think it's certainly turned PE racing around.
Yeah, turned urban racing around.
And I can talk from experience from a show jumping perspective. We very rarely want to show jump on grass. Although grass is aesthetically, it's nice, it looks great, but it's only really great for the first 20 horses and first day's jumping. By the time you're on day 3 or day 4, it's in terrible condition with holes all over the place. So
it becomes uneven, doesn't it?
It becomes uneven, and with the cost of horses and trying to get longer life out of your horses, people are looking for the more consistent surfaces, and the synthetic surfaces, that's what they provide. And so worldwide, from a show jumping point of view, it's all going synthetic. That's where they're going.
Well, that's where the money is. But as far as the racing's concerned, you guys have been innovators, and Martin Collins is now a household name as far as racing is concerned. Are you finding a lot of people? The Americans don't seem to like it, but the rest of the world.
The Americans, obviously, the Breeders' Cup was a big thing. So that's on it's a dirt race, and the American horses are all bred to be dirt horses as opposed to turf. And I think they struggled with that, and it was from really certain venues wanting to host the Breeders' Cup that they changed from Polytrack back to dirt.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with safety or consistency or anything like that of the surface.
Is it a better surface for racing?
I definitely think so, yeah.
No doubt.
No doubt. No.
Is that salesman talk, or have you got figures?
No, well, I mean, that it would be, it's my, obviously, personal from a show jumping point of view. Competing, it's definitely better than grass. And racing, I think the consistency is key. If you look at somewhere like Joburg in the winter, the turf tracks take real strain. The ground's very hard. And you could have a consistent surface all year round, and maybe the Polytrack not there to take away the grass, but to add to it. So you can save your grass track for your big meetings and keep your grass track in really good condition, and use the Polytrack as your almost your everyday surface. And I think your turf horses and Polytrack horses should perform pretty much the same on both tracks. There won't be a big difference. It's not like turf and sand or turf and dirt.
Oh, we definitely find that. We find that horses are pretty sort of able to adapt, and I must say, the majority of the time this track is fantastic, and you guys have done a marvelous job, and I applaud you as an innovator of getting this whole thing up and running. Did you think when you were doing learning to show jump that you could ever be involved in your whole life in this?
It really has become a whole part of my life. So it's but it's nice too. They say if you're doing something that you enjoy, you're not really working. So it's.
Peter, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that's enlightened a few people as to what it's all about. And people don't really understand these things until they're told by the people that are involved. And it's great of you to be down here, and we hope that this new section is going to be a success.
Great, thanks very much. Thanks, James.
Peter Morrison from Martin Collins, and these guys are the Polytrack experts, and as you can hear, they know what they're doing, and we should be asking them more questions, and certainly being able to find out more things about the Polytrack to make our racing even better than it is at the moment. From the head of the Polytrack Centre, KwaZulu-Natal,